Good coffee, David Blackmon and
Oh, I
Irina
don't have my
Stav.
mug with me. Good
Yeah,
morning.
Irina is almost
I'm waiting
receiving.
for mine.
Yeah. Good. This is the episode number 39 of the Energy Transition Series. Our topic today is world organizations and the energy. The point is the following: we have several different organizations, institutions: World Economic Forum, BRICS, G7, G20. I don't have enough fingers. International Energy Agency, International Renewable Energy Agency, United Nations, of course, European Commission, and other. But Irina, please, do they think the same about energy? These different organizations?
Well, the International Energy Agency could easily become a division of the International Renewable Energy Agency these days because, its official statements are totally pro renewable energy and that's the only way forward, and so on and so forth. But in fairness, it needs to be said that the oil market reports that the International Energy Agency releases are a lot more measured. I mean, they do talk about oil demand and oil supply, and that we still need oil. Uh, and sometimes demand is expected to grow. Sometimes they revise that downwards. In these reports, they do their job, uh, to be fair, although of course the head of the agency never misses an opportunity to talk about renewables and how they are the only way forward. As for G7 and BRICS, that's a lot more complicated. They are a much how should I put it, broader organizations and a lot more political as well, and trade oriented. And they are basically at odds right now, even if neither side is admitting it openly. But G7 is imposing a cap on Russian oil, and BRICS member China and BRICS member India are the biggest buyers of Russian oil. So that goes, they're against each other in this, even though I don't know if you've seen the latest statements by U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen. It's been fascinating, if a little bit embarrassing, to be honest, even to me, who's not
Think how
American.
embarrassing it is for me
Oh, I feel for
as
you,
an
David.
American.
Really, really, what a time to be alive. Yeah. She went from trying to get them on board with the price cap to saying it's perfectly fine if they continue buying Russian oil, as long as they don't use Western insurance and shipping services, financial services. And I remember, David, someone commenting on your tweet about it, saying how gracious, how generous of the US to allow sovereign nations to to do what
Right.
their interests dictate. So it's a circus, this thing. And let's not forget, when we talk about G7, that actually all G7 members have a ban on Russian oil imports in place already, or the EU embargo that's coming up. And Japan is exempted because it can't survive without Russian
Right.
oil.
Right.
Yeah. In the meantime, BRICS is growing, but that's a whole other huge topic.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, David, let me add something before you make your comment, because NATO is more military, more focused on defense,
Yeah,
and
Right.
is different from,
defense.
as Irina said, commercial or trade or political, that those ones we mentioned before. What do you see in this topic, David?
Yeah. And of course, yeah. I mean, NATO. You're right. Is a military pact, and I mean, even though our Pentagon, constantly virtue signals about moving to biofuels and somehow moving to renewable energy on military bases, really its focus is different than these political organizations. I was really embarrassed by Secretary Yellen's remarks on Friday in which she, as Irina points out, basically gave permission to India, a country with 4 times the population of the United States, by the way, to continue purchasing Russian crude, and said that would be fine. I mean, and of course it goes to the really silliness of the whole price cap concept, because what at the base the G7 is really doing here to a large extent is capitalizing and trying to take credit for the fact that India and China have already been buying Russian oil at severely discounted prices since Russia invaded Ukraine. And so they've already, those 2 countries, because they have become crisis buyers for Russia as it seeks other markets than outside the EU and the United States, it's such a cynical thing that they're doing to begin with, and then to spend all this time pontificating about it and how effective it's going to be, when in reality, it is simply the process in the market that is determining a lower price for most Russian crude on the market today. And it's all such an embarrassment. But yeah, the United States has been, I think, the worst actor, frankly, in terms of just unbridled arrogance in dealing with other countries. Although I think you'd have to admit Great Britain has a long history of the same kind of thing.
Yeah, the same.
And the U.S. imperialism has not been quite as overt as that of Great Britain and Portugal and France and Spain and on and on and on.
By the way, your post was perfect in this sense. You mentioned those things. Your post, fantastic.
Yeah, it was my absurdity of the day for Sunday. I just it's awful, and it's the same kind of arrogance that when we talk about the BRICS and all these alliances, that is pushing Saudi Arabia increasingly into a posture of wanting to join the BRICS alliance. Mm-hmm. And when that happens, the BRICS alliance is going to become the global power, at probably as big a global power where oil markets are concerned as OPEC has been for all these years, because the BRICS alliance will not just be an organization of oil suppliers, including the second biggest oil supplier, the second and third largest oil supplier on earth in Saudi Arabia and Russia, but also the biggest customers for exporting crude oil.
Half population of the world, yeah.
Right. And so when that happens, and I fully anticipate it will, the BRICS alliance is really going to be, in terms of petroleum trade relations globally, a far more powerful organization than either the G7 or the G20. And it's going to shift a lot of geopolitical dynamics globally. And it's part of, when you really look at recent books, the new map by Dan Yergin, and The End of the World is just beginning by, oh my gosh, I'm going to forget his name. Such a great book. Anyway, several recent books have Peter
Zeihan.
Yes, Zeihan. Great books, and have foreseen a lot of these global geopolitical developments. So I recommend everyone to read both of those books. You will be far more highly informed for doing so. And where the IEA is concerned, I totally agree with y'all's assessment that is just another political organization for the most part. They do produce some good data still, although it's always couched in the narratives and hyperbole of climate alarmism. And it makes me grateful, frankly, when I see Fatih Birol and the IEA engaging in all these political activities. Makes me actually very grateful for the people at the U.S. Energy Information Administration, who have somehow, and it's hard for me to imagine how, so far avoided being politically corrupted by politics in the United States. I mean, Jennifer Granholm is the Secretary of Energy, and she's very political. But still, the Energy Information Agency itself, which reports in through the Energy Department, has remained a very steady and consistent reporter of real energy related data, not just related to the United States, but globally. And I think the destruction, the political corruption of the IEA has really helped to make the EIA the most authoritative energy information source on earth right now. And so I'm really grateful to all the people there for avoiding becoming a politically corrupt organization.
Mm-hmm. A friend of ours is asking to post the names of those books, maybe on
Sure.
the LinkedIn post after we publish.
Yeah. But again, for everyone watching, it's The New Map by Daniel Yergin. You can find it at Amazon. And The End of the World is Just Beginning by Peter Zeihan, Zeihan. But yeah, we'll post them.
Yeah, sure. And I'm not sure it's the same user, LinkedIn user, but he is asking about Biden administration.
The Biden administration does not believe in borders or sovereign nations.
And market.
Yeah, and free
that,
markets.
yeah.
And that's not just the Biden administration. That's really globalism. I mean, that's the leftist political movement in the Western world generally. And yeah, I mean, that's what you see with all the open borders and the mass migration and no effort. Really, Germany was really the first country to really open up its borders to mass immigration. And a lot of it has to do with, and I don't want to get off on this tangent too much, but a lot of it has to do with too low birth rates in the developed world. And you can't maintain these economies without adequate workforces. And so one of the philosophies underlying the open borders is, well, we have to have more workers to power our economies as our native populations diminish. And that's been a big driver of this.
Yeah, but now they don't have to power those economies,
Right.
Actually, I just read that Chancellor Scholz is saying that we could probably close some plants,
Sure,
industrial plants, so we save on gas. So,
Yeah.
Right.
Morning, Stu.
Stuart Hurley. Thank you for coming, Stuart.
Well, hey, Stu, where's your question? Good morning to you too.
Yeah, there is a point from Grand Finale, David, please. It's for me, probably Lula is committed to the state, running Petrobras and effecting oil price controls. That's right. By disconnecting from the global markets. I agree totally with you. Won't that harm Brazil economic standing? Yes. My answer is only yes.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I mean, to the extent you pull back from the global open markets, the less influential you're going to be in these global alliances. And
that's a pity for a country that was so good in the last. So it's a pity.
Does he want to reduce exports and use more crude oil locally?
Yep. But the point is that we produce 3 million barrels a day, and the internal consumption is around 2 million something. So we can export, and we were exporting 1 million barrels a day for more than 6 months to China. But with this confusion, new confusion that we have in the world, so China is preferring buy from
something more
Russia and some
right.
other. So Brazil is looking for different clients nowadays. So, and we are losing a lot of opportunities in Brazil.
It can export to Europe. I mean, Europe's looking for suppliers, even if it's more expensive.
But Brazil is being rejected by the US and the EU.
Right.
That's very smart. Why don't you just reject another big oil supplier? I mean, there's so many of them. Let's reject them all.
That's a good point. Really good.
And of course, the other problem is going to be as he nationalizes Petrobras. If he succeeds in doing that, then you're going to have a hard time attracting new investment in maintaining the pace of production and ultimately you won't be able to export crude
Yeah,
oil.
sure, David, but it takes time and
It
it's not
takes
so
time,
easy
yeah.
because we are not a big country in terms of trade
Right,
proportion. So
right.
this
Do
is
you think Lula could go the way of Lopez Obrador in Mexico? He kicked out all foreign oil companies and, as David said, put the national company in charge.
yeah, that's difficult to say. But the last two mandates from Lula, that nothing of this happened. So
That's
was a
good. That's
So it's a
reason to
good
hope.
news for us. But you can expect. We don't know exactly what can come
Yeah.
in January.
Mm.
Yeah, you asked it to Stuart, and he is asking something. If it's not,
This is from
for
Stu.
sure
What
it's for you.
about Biden wanting India to cut ties with Russia? Is he being a bully? Well, sure. Yeah. Yeah. And India isn't going to cut ties from Russia because India is, again, as we talked about earlier, is able to buy crude oil to power its economy at highly discounted prices from Russia. And I mean, why would they?
India is actually expanding ties with Russia,
Yeah.
and what a lot of people in political circles in the West seem to be forgetting is that Russia and India have a long-standing relationship. This is not something new. They have
Right.
a very, very long-standing relationship, and it's only getting closer. Yes, Biden is being a bully. His whole administration is being a bully, a kindergarten bully, which is worse.
Yeah. A
Even
not very intelligent bully. Yeah.
Exactly, it's kindergarten style of behavior and everything.
Irina, curiosity I would like to have your opinion about this because these institutions, organizations are more focused on trade and commercial and the energy transition instead of the energy security. That should be something very important for the institution to make the world more secure. What do you see in this?
You mean all organizations or?
Are more focused on energy
Well,
transition and
yes,
instead
yes.
of the energy
Some of
security?
them are still needlessly focused on the energy transition, but to be fair, the European Union has realized that energy security is also quite important, especially at this time of the year. And they're trying to enhance energy security, but now the warnings are beginning to come in for next year and the year after that.
Mm-hmm.
Because however the situation in the Ukraine develops, they won't, lift sanctions from Russia. And Russian gas flows are not returning. So they're building LNG import terminals. Prices keeping high. I just saw that Pakistan has no sellers whatsoever for its latest LNG tenders, which is really serious problem. But
Yeah.
Europe will begin having problems too. Next year, it will have to fill its storage for the winter of 2023, and there will not be enough gas. So energy security is already compromised for at least a couple of years more, regardless of how much US producers can produce and all the other producers, Qatar and African countries. But at least they are, waking up to the fact, politicians, are waking up to the fact that energy security takes priority right now, and they are admitting as much. They are saying that for now we will prioritize energy security, but they are managing to include the transition argument as well. The only way to be really secure in our energy supply is to go renewable.
Right. Yeah.
And that's not good. Put it like this, that's not good.
And Mr. Birol seems to think if he just says that often enough, it will be real, right?
Yeah,
He's
it's not
really
just
the worst
him.
offender.
Yeah.
But it's not just him. Ursula von der Leyen.
Yeah, she's as bad as he is. Yeah.
The guy in, France, Germany, all of them, they keep repeating that mantra over and over and over again. But no amount of wind and solar power is going to make a country energy secure. It's just not possible. And without it's why Europe's in such a desperation effort right now to build these LNG import facilities and find alternative sources of crude oil. And because that's what really provides energy security in the modern world and always has, and probably will for the foreseeable decades. And it, yes, I mean, the thing about the LNG is it's going to go, it's a market driven thing from the suppliers, and the suppliers are going to supply it to the country that's willing to pay the most for it.
Okay.
And right now that's Europe, but that's not always going to be the case. And when that changes, then Europe's needs are only going to become more severe. And no one is actually addressing the elephant in the room, which is how do you displace that LNG with firm, indigenous, somehow natural gas provided at a reasonable price via pipeline from some supplier other than Russia. And you know, you're pretty limited in what you can do there. But ultimately, Europe is going to have to answer that question because, you know, LNG is just going to go where the market demands it to go. And unless Germany is a great example, unless they're willing to enter into a long-term, and by long-term, I mean 10-year supply agreement at a very premium price, they're not going to be able to have secure supplies of LNG that are really adequate.
That's right.
That's why they're preparing people for the closure of factories, I think.
Yeah.
We have to close businesses so we can, you know, make do with the gas that we do have.
Another LinkedIn user I recently found a group called Shanghai Cooperation Organization. How is different from BRICS? I'm not familiar with this.
I have never heard
think
of
this
it.
one's more Asia focused, including Central Asia and Russia. There was a meeting of this organization recently. I don't know a lot about it, but I think it's more Asia focused, unlike BRICS, which is truly global. And the SEO is more regional, but again, with Russia and China and the Central Asian countries there and other Asian economies, it might become a factor to reckon with eventually. It's trade oriented, and it could, this is pure speculation, by the way, you know how there's a shift from using the US dollar in bilateral trade between countries from BRICS and regional trade in Asia. And it could reinforce this shift and reduce the weight of the US dollar in international trade with you know, some of the biggest trading nations in the world who are in Asia.
David, how these leaders of this organization we mentioned before are, let's see, appointed? Is by friendship?
Well, yeah, that's a really good question. You know, I mean, the International Energy Agency is a good example. You know, it is an independent agency. Really, it's not really a part of the UN. It is a group that is, or a service that is sponsored by, I don't remember how many countries, but dozens of big countries that pay dues and select someone to be the leader of it. And you know, they've chosen to have Mr. Birol as their figurehead, and you know, there's a democratic, semi-democratic process within the organization in order to choose those leaders. And you know, it's just like a trade association. Trade associations don't always make the best choices of people to be their presidents and CEOs. And Mr. Birol, for whatever we think his shortcomings are, is effective at repeating, you know, pushing out the narrative that these countries want him to push out. And at the same time, as we both all said, agreed earlier, I think that, you know, the IEA does continue to put together reports that contain useful, actual, real information.
Facts, yeah.
It's just has a very highly politicized purpose in pushing that information out. And at the EU, it's the same, essentially a very similar structure. All the member countries have delegates, and they vote on leadership, and they have a process for determining who that's going to be. And but it's no different than here in America or in Brazil. You often don't choose really strong leaders, and
that's the same.
Yeah.
Irina, can you see this question on the
Yes.
screen?
Hi,
JB?
guys. I don't see our leaders making any sensible statements on energy security here in the UK. No, and you won't see them anytime soon. They're still hooked on reducing, eliminating 1/10 of one CO2 molecule. Is water vapor next? It's possible, JB. You never know. I mean, we have to be encouraged to consume less of everything. So who knows what will be next? But yeah, they're not making any sensible statements. It's all energy transition all the way, and more wind and solar and more hydrogen, and let's not drill anymore for oil and gas in the North Sea, which is, given the current situation, the current circumstances of the UK with regard to energy security, it's unbelievable that new exploration for oil and gas, new production of oil and gas in the North Sea is still being actively discouraged by politicians. I mean, we're not talking about shale. I mean, shale is totally untapped. It will be more expensive, and of course, there's a lot of opposition. But you already produce oil and gas from the North Sea. Just keep on doing it and possibly expand it. But no, it's politically incorrect.
Mr. Birol said on May 21 that we need to stop new projects in oil and gas.
Yeah, 6 months later, he said there's not enough oil and gas in the world, so you should be investing more in new oil and gas.
Yeah, that was a pretty quick turnaround there, wasn't it?
Yeah,
and in Great Britain, you had a prime minister for 45 days who wanted to change direction where energy supply is concerned.
She did one thing right, yeah.
Right, and she was promptly drummed out of office.
One thing right is good.
Now, she did an awful lot of things wrong that led to that result.
But she did one thing right.
And she was just replaced by a guy who is a member of the Conservative Party somehow, but is really just another globalist. And so Great Britain's going to continue to go down the same path it's been on. And that just means an inevitable economic issue going forward, and hopefully not a depression, but probably a pretty significant recession. Mm-hmm. As your supplies, if you don't have enough natural gas to power your manufacturing industries, manufacturing is going to have to shut down in Great Britain, just like it has in Germany and some of these other countries. And, it's all pretty obvious, but no one seems to want to actually say it.
David, can you see this in the screen, the new question from Grant now?
Oh, gosh, how much more dire will the energy crisis become when countries like Colombia halt oil exploration? Well, I mean, it's going to become much more dire. And, and it's not just in oil and gas. I mean, it's also in all these energy minerals that the electric vehicles and the wind and solar industry has to have too. These are very finite resources that, when you really read the data the IEA publishes, you see future demand growth numbers that are just completely unrealistic and are not going to be met by an economy that is actually being intentionally reduced by these Western governments. I mean, I think we all need to recognize that what's happening in Germany is not an accident. It's part of a plan to limit and ultimately reverse economic growth in order to get to net zero by 2050. When you really listen to what figures like Antonio Guterres and all these prophets of the climate alarm movement say, it's all about, at the end of the day, ending economic growth and ultimately reversing it. Mm-hmm. Well, if you're going to do that, you're not going to have not just oil and gas. You're not going to have enough copper or lithium or any of these. Yeah. I mean, any of them. You're not going to have enough supply of it to really power a robust energy sector of any kind. And
But
so
the second level of the energy, because we need to have a source, energy source, to
right,
have this cobalt and lithium.
To produce
Right.
them, yeah.
Yeah, sure.
right. And you can say, well, we can enhance energy security if we just get the battery technology right. Well, the battery technology, and it doesn't matter which technology it is, whether it's vanadium or lithium ion or any of these other technologies, they all have to have massively, incredibly rapidly rising supplies of these energy minerals. And
Yeah, and for
without a
costs,
robust
because
economy, you're not going to have that. So
Yeah, that's right.
but I'd like to see Colombia stop oil exploration and production first.
yeah.
New bit.
Well, banning exports in the U.S., I guess all exports in the U.S. lower the price in the U.S. or increase prices. Well, it'll increase prices because, because we don't have enough refining capacity for light sweet crude oil being produced out of the shale plays, the Permian Basin, the Eagle
The
Ford,
same
the
in
Bakken.
Brazil.
And if you can't export 2 to 3 million barrels a day of that crude oil, then it's going to simply be shut in. And if you shut in 2 to 3 million barrels a day of production, the price of crude oil on the global market is going to skyrocket, and gas prices will skyrocket with it. That's my 50-word answer to Stu's
That's cool.
question.
Yeah.
That's right. Excellent. So 35 minutes. It's good, fast. This.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Quite a discussion we had.
Time flies when
Yeah,
you're
I
having
have a
so much
proposal
fun.
for you to see if my phrase is good. We need to pray to Ursula's Biros Gutierrez to have success, because they are our, let's see, people that drive our new next steps in terms of energy.
Yeah. Yeah, we need to pray for them to have intellectual revelations in their brains to realize their own.
That this sounds doomed. But yeah, we can hope.
We can hope.
We can hope.
We
Why
can
not?
always hope. Yeah.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
It's always a pleasure. I wish we had better things to say.
Yeah, next time. Maybe,
There's
as
hope.
Irina suggested, COP27 the next week.
Yeah,
COP27. Oh, that'll
There's
be fun.
so many news.
That will be fun. Yeah.
Bye bye. Have a good
Bye.
day. Good week.
Have a great week.
Thank
Bye.
you. You too.
Bye bye.